Hello and welcome to this video. Today I have a new tutorial for you. We're going to create a dynamic calendar in Google Sheets. First, I'm going to walk you through how the template works and all the features that we're going to add into it. And then we're going to build the whole thing together from scratch, starting with a blank spreadsheet. So let's get into it. So this is what the template could end up looking like once you fill it out a bit. And then this is what it's going to look like blank. So as you can see, it's initially undated. And to start working on it, the first thing that you have to do is you have to set the date in which you want your calendar to begin. And you're going to do that by double clicking on cell C2 and then picking a date from this calendar that appears. So let's say December 28th, for example. And as you can see, as soon as I did that, dates got filled out automatically in my calendar. So now I can go ahead and start adding tasks into this table. So to add a task, the first thing that you have to do is set a date in this column, and you do that by double clicking on the cell and then selecting a date. So let's do January 1st, for example, and then you're going to go ahead and add your task or event. So let's say New Year's. And as soon as I add that, you're going to see that New Year's appeared on January 1st in my calendar. And you can add multiple events each day. So let's say January 1st, let's do brunch at mom's. And now that showed up here as well. So whatever you add in this table right here is going to be automatically displayed in the calendar. And what's cool about this is that you can change the start date as often as you like, and your tasks will move around so that they are always displayed in the proper day. So if you're ready to build this with me, go ahead, open a blank Google Sheets spreadsheet and follow along. Before we get started, I want to mention a very important thing. If you're following along, make sure that you're doing everything in exactly the same cells that I'm doing it, just so that if you run into any issues, your formulas will look exactly like mine and you'll be able to easily figure out where things went wrong. So let's get started. So I'm going to start by adding some borders to create a basic layout. So I'm going to select cells B2 and C2, and I'm going to click on borders. I'm going to use the black one so that it stands out. And then I'm going to click on all borders. And then I'm going to select everything from cell E4 all the way to cell K4, and you can actually see the range that I have selected if you take a look at this area up here. So that's how you can make sure that you're selecting the proper range as well. So with that range selected, again, I'm going to click on borders and all borders. So that's where my first week of dates is going to go. And then I'm going to select everything from cell E6 all the way to cell E10. And before adding borders, I'm going to merge those cells together by clicking on this merge cells button up here. And then I'm going to click on borders and outer borders. And then I'm just going to copy that cell. I'm going to select everything from cell F5 all the way to cell K10, and I'm going to paste. So this right here will be our first week. And I'm actually going to make this wider. So I'm going to select all 7 columns, everything from E to K. And if you have multiple columns selected and you change the width of one of them, you'll be changing the width of all of them at the same time. So I'm just going to do that so it's more of a square. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this entire thing, everything from cell E4 all the way to cell K10. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to click on cell E11 and I'm going to paste. And then I'm going to click on cell E18. I'm going to paste. Cell E25. I'm going to paste. And let's do one more, cell E32, and I'm going to paste. So that will be our basic calendar layout. Up here, this is where our start date is going to go. So on cell B2, I'm going to type in the label start date. And then down here, this is where our list of tasks is going to go. So I'm going to select everything from cell B4 all the way down to cell C54. And with this range selected, I'm going to click on borders, outer border. So I'm going to click on cell B4 and I'm going to type in the label date. This is where our dates are going to go. And then on cell C4, I'm going to type in task/event. This is where our events are going to go. And I'm going to make column C a bit wider and then columns A and D a bit smaller. So this is what our basic layout is going to look like. And now we can go ahead and start adding features and formulas. So as you may recall, the first thing that the user has to do is select the date in which they want the calendar to begin. And they do that by double clicking on this cell and setting a date. So let's go ahead and add that feature. We're going to select cell C2 and we're going to click on data validation. And then a sidebar is going to appear over here to the right. We're going to click on add rule. And from this criteria drop-down option, we're going to find the one that says is valid date. We're going to select it. And then we're going to choose to reject the input if the user tries to add anything that's not a date. And then we're going to click on done. and we're gonna close this. So after you do that, if you double click on cell C2, a calendar will appear. So you can go ahead and you can pick any date that you want. Now by default, this is the format in which dates are going to be displayed, but I prefer that they are displayed as text. So let's go ahead and format it so that it looks a bit more friendly. I'm gonna select cell C2 and I'm gonna click on Format, Number, and I'm gonna find Custom Date and Time down below. And as you can see, we get a list in which you have different ways of formatting your dates. So I'm just gonna find the one that has the weekday and then the month, both abbreviated. I'm gonna select it and you're gonna see that the format updates automatically up here. So I'm just gonna click on apply. And now I have the weekday and the month, and I just think it's more user-friendly to display it that way. And so whenever the user sets a start date, what we want to happen is we want that date to be the first date that is displayed in our calendar. So we're going to do that very easily by referencing cell C2. So we're going to select cell E4, we're going to do equals, and immediately after we're going to click on cell C2 and we're going to press enter. So now whenever the user changes the start date, that first day in the calendar is being updated as well. So go ahead and test that that is exactly what's happening on your file as well. So once that's working properly, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure that dates for the rest of the calendar are filled in automatically as well. So we're going to start with the second day over here that should be displayed on cell F4. And what we're going to do in this cell is we're going to create a formula that takes the previous day and just adds one day. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to select cell F4, we're going to do equals, we're going to click on cell E4, which holds our previous date, and we're going to do +1. And then we're going to press enter. And what should happen is you should be seeing the next day. And if you change the start date, both days should update accordingly. Now, it is working properly, but there is one additional thing that we need to consider, and it's that when the template is initially blank and there isn't any dates in here, this formula shouldn't be doing anything. But as you can see, it is still trying to display a date. So to prevent that from happening, we need to check that there's actually a valid date in the previous cell before we try to do anything in this second cell. So let's go ahead and let's edit our formula on cell F4 so we can take that into consideration. So I'm going to select cell F4. I'm going to press enter so I can edit the formula. And right after the equal sign, I'm going to add the if function. So I'm going to do if, open parentheses, and then I'm going to type in is date, open parentheses, and then I'm going to type E4, close parentheses, and I'm going to do a comma. So what's happening here is the formula is checking if cell E4 is a date. If that is true, then go ahead and execute the formula that we had before. Take cell E4 and add one day. If it's not true, if this is not a valid date, then we don't want anything to happen. So right after the number 1, we're going to do a comma. We're going to leave it empty because we don't want anything to happen, and we're going to close parentheses. So go ahead, take a look at the formula, make sure it looks exactly like mine, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press enter. So if you don't have a start date selected, you shouldn't be seeing anything in either of these two cells. And then if you select a start date, both cells should be filled out properly. So before moving on, make sure yours is working as well. I'm going to show you the formula one more time. You can pause the video if you need to. So now that our formula is working properly, we can easily reuse it on the rest of the week. So we're going to go ahead, select cell F4, we're going to copy, and then we're going to select everything from cell G4 all the way to cell K4, and we're gonna paste. So now we have a full sequence of 7 days that updates automatically whenever we change the start date. And this worked right out of the box because the moment we copied our formula on cell F4 and we pasted it on the rest of the cells, the formula adapted. So initially cell F4 was referencing the previous cell E4 and adding 1. The moment we pasted it on the next cell, it adapted. So now this one is referencing cell F4 and it is adding 1. This one is referencing cell G4, as you can see up here in the formula, and it is adding 1, and that kept on happening on every single cell. Now to fill out our dates for the next week, we're going to start by jumping into cell E11 and adding 1 day to the last day of the previous week. So we're going to do that by selecting cell E11, we're going to do equals, and we're going to do if, open parentheses, we're going to check if there's a date in here by typing is date, open parentheses. We're going to click on cell K4, which holds the last day of the previous week. We're going to close parentheses. So if there's a date on cell K4, we're going to do a comma. We're going to click on cell K4 again. We're going to do +1. So if there's a date on cell K4, take K4 and add 1 day. We're going to add a comma. If there isn't a date in there, we're not going to do anything. And we're going to close parentheses. So once your formula looks like this, you're going to press enter and you should be seeing the very next day down here. Now for the rest of the week, we can very easily copy the formulas found up here, paste them down below, and it'll work right out of the box. So we're going to go ahead, select everything from cell F4 all the way to cell K4. We're going to copy, then we're going to select cell F11 and we're gonna paste. And similar to what happened up here, the formula adapted. So now this one right here, as you can see, it's referencing cell E11, and that's just gonna keep on happening every single day. So the first week is special because this first cell is referencing the start date, but then every single week after that is gonna work exactly the same way as the second week. So we can very easily just copy everything from cell E11 all the way to cell K11. So you're gonna go ahead, select that, you're gonna copy, and then you're going to select cell E18 and you're going to paste, cell E25 and you're going to paste, cell E32 and you're going to paste. So now we have our full calendar. You can go ahead, play around with it and make sure that your dates are updating properly. So once it's working properly, we can go ahead and we can connect our table so that our events are displayed in the calendar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create these pop-up calendars so that the user can easily assign a date to each event. So right now, if you double click on any of these date cells, nothing is happening. And what we want to do here is pretty much the same thing that we already have here on cell C2. So instead of going through the whole thing again, we can take advantage of this, the fact that we already have the calendar and that the date is already formatted, and we can just copy it and paste it on these cells. So I'm going to go ahead and select cell C2. I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to select everything from cell B5 all the way to cell B54, and I'm not gonna paste in a normal way. I'm gonna paste in a special way just so we don't mess up the borders. So instead of pasting with the keyboard, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna select the option paste special and then all except borders. So that way you don't have to fix the borders afterwards. And as you can see, I'm just gonna make this wider. I get the same date on every single cell, and then every single cell gets a pop-up calendar right out of the box. So once it's working properly, you can just go ahead, select everything from cell B5 all the way to cell B54 and press delete on your keyboard so you get rid of the date selection. So you got rid of the date selection, but the calendar is still gonna work if you double click on any of these cells. So you can go ahead and test that yourself in your own file. And once we have that, it's time to move on to the good stuff, which is our connection between this table and the calendar. So first, I'm just gonna get rid of all of the dates that I added. So my table is completely blank. You can do the same thing. And then you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna set any start date that you want. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. So to be able to create our formula, we're going to add a couple of tasks as examples. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to add 3 tasks on this same day. So I'm just going to double click here and I'm going to add November 16, and that's going to be task 1. Then I'm just going to copy this, paste it below, and then change this so I have task 1, task 2, and task 3. So make sure that your start date and your 3 tasks all have the same day. So now that we have that, what we want to happen is we want these 3 tasks to be displayed right here on their corresponding day. And before we do that, I'm just going to align everything in the middle because the alignment is bothering me a bit. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and click on this rectangle up here right above the number 1 that will select the entire sheet. And then we'll just click on this horizontal align option right here and we'll change it to center. Now that looks better. So what we're going to do in this cell to be able to display our tasks is we're going to create a formula that will first find every single task that belongs to this day, and then it's going to join every single one of those tasks together as a single text. So we're going to select cell E5. We're going to do equals, and then we're going to join the result of a filter. So we're going to type in join, open parentheses, and the delimiter that we're going to use is a dash. So we're going to open quotations, we're going to add a space, a dash, another space, and then we're gonna close quotations so that it looks something like this. We're gonna do a comma, and then this is where our filter is gonna go. So every element that our filter returns will be joined together with a dash in between each element. So let's go ahead and create our filter. So after the comma, we're gonna type filter, open parentheses, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna select our range of tasks. So that's gonna be everything from cell C5 all the way to cell C54. That's the range that should appear in your formula over here. So that's the range that we're gonna filter. Then we're gonna do a comma and we're gonna add our condition. So the condition is that I only want to filter tasks that have a date that matches the date right above the cell that I'm working on. So the way we're gonna add that condition is we're gonna select our range of dates, everything from cell B5 all the way to cell B54. We're gonna do equals, and then we're gonna click on cell E4, which holds the date that we're working with right now. Then we're gonna close parentheses. So this first parentheses is closing our filter formula, and then we're gonna close parentheses again. So the second one is closing our join formula. So make sure that your formula looks exactly like this. You can pause the video if you need to, and once it looks like this, you can go ahead and you can press enter. And this is what you should be seeing, the 3 tasks that you added to this first day joined together with a dash as a separator. So right now everything's vertically aligned in the bottom for me. So I'm just gonna change that so it's aligned in the middle. I'm gonna select cell E5, and then I'm gonna click on this vertical align button up here, and I'm gonna change it to middle. Now, what we have here is every single one of my tasks is being joined together as a single row. And what I want is I want every single task to have its own row visually, even though everything is inside the same cell, something like this. So the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna jump back into our formula. I'm gonna select cell E5. I'm gonna press enter. And right now our delimiter is just a dash. So in between each element, we're just adding a dash. Now we wanna add something to that delimiter so that in between each element, we're also getting a line break. So what I want to happen is take the first element, add a line break, and then add the dash. So the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna jump right after the first parentheses. So we have join, open parentheses, right after that, we're gonna add our line break. And we're gonna do that by typing char, open parentheses, you're gonna add the number 10, just trust me on this, close parentheses, and then we're gonna do an ampersand. So what this char function does is it's going to display a different character or symbol depending on the number that you give it. So the number 10 represents a line break. And then we're using this ampersand to join it with our current dash symbol. So now this whole thing is our delimiter. So once it looks like this, you can go ahead, you can press enter, and this is what it's going to look like. So what we have here is every single one of our elements with a line break and a dash in between. So you have your first element and then a line break that's created thanks to char 10, and then a dash. And then our second element, a line break and a dash. And that will keep on happening with every single element that you add. You can add a fourth task if you want, and you'll see it appear on your cell. Now, since our formula is only adding our delimiter in between tasks, we need to manually add a dash to the first task. So again, we're going to select cell E5. We're going to press enter so we can edit our formula. And right after the equal sign, we're going to open quotations. We're going to do a space, a dash, a space, close quotations, and then we're going to do an ampersand. So this ampersand is going to allow us to join together this dash with whatever text results from this formula, and then that whole thing becomes a single text. So once it looks like that, you can press enter, and now you can see a dash right before your first task as well. Now, at the moment, this is the only cell that has a formula. Every other cell in my calendar is empty. So I'm just going to select cell E5, and I'm going to change the background color so I can remember that it's the only one with a formula. I'm going to use this light gray from right to left. So the formula is almost ready to be copied and pasted everywhere else in the calendar, but there are a couple of things that we still need to take into consideration. We want to see what would happen if there weren't any tasks matching this day. So we're going to check that by double clicking on cell C2 and changing the start date to any other date that's not the one that you've been using. So I'm just going to do November 11, and this is what's going to happen. Since there are no matches found in the filter evaluation, you're going to get an error. So basically, we're getting an error because there are no tasks matching this day. So what we want to do is we want to catch that error and display something else instead. In this case, I don't want to display anything. I just want it to be empty. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to edit our formula. We're going to press enter on cell E5. We're going to jump right after the equal sign, and we're going to type in if error, open parentheses. So if all of this ends up throwing an error, you're going to jump to the very end of the formula. You're going to add a comma, and this is where you should add whatever you want to display instead of the error. And since we don't want to display anything, we just want it to be empty, we're going to leave it empty. We're not going to do anything, and we're going to close parentheses, and we're going to press enter. So now the error message should disappear, and if you change this back to the date that you've been using, you should see your tasks. And now we need to make sure that this formula only runs if there is a date in here. So if we delete the start date and we don't have a date in here, you're going to see a bunch of dashes because it's trying to match these empty cells. So to get rid of that, we're going to select cell E5. Again, we're going to press enter to edit our formula. And what we're going to do here is we're going to check if there's actually a date on cell E4 before trying to run this entire thing. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to jump right after the equal sign, and we're going to do if open parentheses, and we're going to check if there's a date on cell E4. So we're going to do that by typing is date, open parentheses, E4, close parentheses, and then we're going to do a comma. So if there is a date on cell E4 up here, then you can go ahead and run the formula. And if there isn't a date, we're going to jump to the very end of our formula. We're going to add a comma. If there isn't a date, we don't want anything to be displayed. So again, we're going to leave it empty, and we're going to close parentheses. And once we have that, we can press enter, and those dashes should disappear. So when there isn't a start date in here, this should be empty. If you select the date that you've been working with, you should see your tasks. If you select any other day, you shouldn't see anything. So I'm just gonna show you the formula one more time. You can pause the video if yours is not working properly and make sure it looks exactly like mine. And now we're just missing one step before we are able to copy and paste the formula everywhere else. So whenever you copy and paste a formula from one cell to another, the formula will try to adapt. So before you copy and paste your formula, you need to distinguish between the references that you want to remain static and then the references that should adapt when you're copying and pasting the formula. So in our formula, we want the reference to the task table to remain static, and then we want the date to adapt so that each of these cells is always looking at its own date. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to select cell E5. We're going to press enter so we can edit our formula, and we're going to take a look at this part over here where we have our filter. So this range C5 to cell C54, that's our task list, and then the range B5 to B54, those are our dates. So those are the two things that we want to remain static. And the way we're going to do that in our formula is we're going to click anywhere on this first range, and we're going to press F4 on our keyboard. And as you can see, it's going to add these dollar signs right before the letter and right before the number. And we're going to do the same thing to this range. So we're going to click anywhere in this range, and we're going to press F4 on our keyboard, and that will add those dollar signs in here as well. So these dollar signs are what's going to make sure that our reference to these ranges stays static, and then everything else can adapt. So once it looks like this, our formula is finally done and it's ready to be copied and pasted everywhere else. So I'm just going to press enter, and then I'm going to copy this cell E5, and I'm going to select everything from cell F5 all the way to cell K10, so these other 6 days, and I'm going to paste. And I'm going to run a small test to make sure that it's working. So I'm just going to change these 4 dates so that they match these 4 dates over here, and I'm going to make sure that the tasks appear in their corresponding day. So as you can see, as I am adding tasks, they are showing up in their corresponding day. So everything is working properly. And then if I add more than one task to the same day, both tasks will be displayed in the same cell. So once you're sure it's working properly, you can go ahead, copy this entire thing, everything from cell E5 to cell K10. So I'm going to select that, I'm going to copy, and then we can paste it on every single week down below. So we're going to select cell E12 and we're going to paste. We're going to select cell E19, we're going to paste, cell E26, we're going to paste, and finally cell E33, and we're going to paste. So now the entire calendar has formulas, and you can go ahead, play around with it, and make sure that when you add tasks, they are appearing on their corresponding day. And then you can make sure that if you change the start date, the dates will shift around and the tasks will remain tied to their corresponding day. So now we have a fully functional dynamic calendar, and now we're going to play around with the styling so we can go from this very basic layout to something that looks pretty like this one. So I'm going to start by making sure that everything is perfectly aligned in the middle. So I'm going to click on this rectangle up here above the number 1 to select the entire sheet, and I'm going to jump into this horizontal align option, and I'm going to pick the one that says center, and then right next to it, vertical align, I'm going to pick middle, and then text wrapping, I'm going to select the one that says wrap. And then while I still have this selected, I'm going to change the font. So I'm going to use Lato, and then I'm going to bold a couple of texts. I'm going to bold these two labels, date and task event. So I'm just going to select them and click on bold, and then the start date, I'm also going to bold it, so I'm just going to select it, click on bold, and now I'm going to style the calendar. So I'm just going to style one day, and then I'm just going to copy that formatting and I'm going to paste it in the entire calendar. So I'm going to make sure that the first day has some tasks in there just so that I can see what it's going to end up looking like. So I'm just going to add a couple of tasks into that first day, and then I'm going to select this first date cell E4, and I'm going to change the background color to this blue over here, light cyan 3. And then I actually want these particular task cells to be aligned to the left. So I'm going to select cell E5 and I'm going to click on horizontal align, and I'm going to align it to the left. And then the date over here, I just want it to show the month, the day, and the year. I don't want it to show the weekday. I'm going to add the weekday up here in a moment. So I'm going to select cell E4 and I'm going to click on format, number, custom date and time, and I'm going to find one that only has the month, the day, and the year. I'm going to select it and I'm going to click apply. And since every one of these cells is referencing the previous one, that date formatting got updated on the entire calendar. So now we just need to copy the rest of the formatting, and we're going to do that by selecting both the date and the task cell. So everything from cell E4 to cell E10. And then we're going to click on this button over here, this paint format that's right next to the printer. And as you can see, once you click on it, it's going to turn blue. Immediately after that, you're going to go ahead and you're going to click and drag to select the entire calendar, everything from cell E4 without releasing all the way to cell K38, and you're going to release. And the moment you release, you're going to see that that same formatting that you had on this first cell got applied to the entire calendar. And then if you take a look at the example, we have our weekdays displayed at the top, and those have to be dynamic because the user can select absolutely any weekday as a start date. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to jump to cell E2 and we're going to do equals, and immediately after we're going to click on cell E4 and we're going to press enter. So all we're doing is referencing the date that's directly below so that when that date changes, this one changes as well. And now we're going to do a little trick so that instead of seeing the full date, we are only seeing the weekday. So we're going to do that by selecting cell E2 and we're going to click on format, number, custom date and time. And from this list, we're going to find one that has only the weekday. So mine's up here, but yours could be anywhere in the list. So I'm just going to click on that and I'm going to click apply. So now, no matter what start date you select, you get the corresponding weekday in that cell. So we're going to format it by adding a background color. So I'm going to select cell E2. I'm going to click on fill color, and you can choose any color that you want. If you want the same one that I'm going to be adding, you can click on this add custom color button. And then on this cell over here, you're going to delete the content and you're going to add this exact same value. So that's the purple that I'm going to be using. And then you can click on OK. And now I'm going to change the font color to white. So once it looks like this, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to copy that, I'm going to select everything from cell F2 to cell K2, and I'm going to paste. So the formula adapted so that it's always referencing the date that's directly below, and then we're formatting it so that we're only seeing the weekday. And then I'm going to add the same background to the start date. So again, fill color, I'm going to choose my custom color that I created down here with a white font. Same thing for these two cells. Again, fill color, white font. And then the second row, I want the fonts to be a bit bigger. So I'm just going to click on row number 2, on the number 2 to select the whole thing. And I'm going to change the font size to 12. And then I'm going to make this row a bit taller. And that's looking really nice. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. And then to make it even prettier, I'm going to get rid of the grid lines that are there by default, these harsh grid lines over here. And I'm going to replace them with my own lighter borders. So first, I'm going to get rid of the grid lines by clicking on View, Show, grid lines. And then I'm just going to change the borders that I added to something that's more subtle. So I'm going to select the entire calendar, everything from cell E4 all the way to cell K38. I'm going to click on borders and I'm going to change the color to this fifth gray from right to left. And then I'm going to click on all borders. So that made it lighter. I'm going to change the borders in here as well. So I'm going to select cells B2 and C2. I'm going to click on borders. And again, I'm going to do all borders. The table, I'm going to do it a bit differently. I'm going to add some lighter grid lines in the middle and then this same gray in the outer border. So first, let's do the outer border. Let's select everything from cell B4 all the way to cell C54, and then I'm going to click on borders, and this time I'm just going to click on outer borders. And now I'm going to add in some inner borders so that we have these subtle grid lines right here. So I'm going to select everything from cell B5 all the way to cell C54. I'm going to click on borders and I'm going to change the color to this second gray from right to left, and I'm going to click on inner borders. And that's it. You can delete your example tasks, you can delete your start date, and then you can start fresh whenever you want, add some tasks, and this is what your calendar could end up looking like. So that's it for the tutorial. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. I love creating dynamic calendars and I love adding them into my advanced templates. So if you love using spreadsheets to help you get organized, make sure to take a look at the digital annual planner. I'm going to leave a link in the description. It includes a dynamic calendar that's very similar to this one, and then it also includes a daily planner for your schedules and a habit tracker. And this is a 12-month template, so each month gets its own calendar, its own daily planner, and its own habit tracker. And it's undated, so it will work any year, and it's also available in black and white. So I'm gonna leave the link to this in the description in case you're interested in taking a look. If you want the example file of the tutorial, you can get it in the description down below as well. And if you made it this far and you were able to build the template by yourself, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.